What's up guys, it's Sean and welcome to another episode of the Eheng Podcast, and today I want to talk about a topic that is pretty common but most often the time misunderstood. Today I want to talk about the very famous zero money down deal, aka no money down deal. It means you don't need to cough out any capital in order to own the property, but it's most often the time misunderstood by youngsters, especially where you don't need money to buy a property. So how does all this come about? I think only the old birds will know. Like conventionally, last time, right, all of us are required to pay 10% down payment regardless whether it's a new property or an old property. There's no innovation within the marketing and the finance team, right, to talk about that 10% discount. Therefore, property transaction is rather slow, and people with savings, people with capital only gets to play real estate. And when I think about my very first property investment, right, it takes me around 40,000, around 50,000, right, just to fully own a 300,000 property. And for an economic situation like now, how many 22-year-olds walk around with 50,000 in terms of cash ready to buy a property? Then it was only around 11 to 12 years ago, I was involved in a property investment club already, and they were doing bulk purchases. Also, it was very new at that time. They were taking out 30 units, 50 units, and if I were to take up that deal, it means I don't have to cough out any money to buy the property. And guess how they market the returns? It's infinite return. Because whatever returns you get from the property, you divide by zero, which is the capital you put up front, right? Any amount divided by zero is infinite. That's why the marketing tagline is also infinite returns. However, most of the properties that they market back then, none of them succeeded lah. So zero money down deal or no money down deal, whichever you want to call it, right, it works both in sub-sales as well as new properties. Well, it's actually more common in new properties nowadays. Regardless whatever properties that you walk in today, right, minimally you can get 10% at least. So by merely paying a 500 ringgit booking fee, as long as you can qualify for the loan, you can own the property immediately without coughing out any further money. So the whole goal of marketing for property developers for the past at least 3 to 5 years, right, the goal has been to enable first-time home buyers to get properties. This young group of buyers, right, most of them has great credibility, but they got one problem: zero capital. Credibility has never been a problem, and most of us have 3 to 4 credit cards easily, but the main problem for youngsters nowadays is capital. I got no capital to start with. That's why the sub-sale market has been suffering all this while, because it's almost impossible to start unless you have Pharma Foundation backing you up lah. Then from a sub-sale point of view, how people do it is they play around with the SPA price against the market value. For example, this property is 500,000 today, and we have seen emails verifying this, and I've personally tried this before as well. So I can go to the bank today, hey Mr. Bank, this property, how much is it valued at? It's actually valued at 550,000, for example, but the owner is willing to sell at 500,000. Some might argue that why the owner don't go and check? Well, the owner might want to sell faster, right? And not all owners will actually check market value. So 550,000, okay. In order for me to take a loan on 550,000, the SPA needs to be 550,000. So a lawyer is required in this position to set up an agreement saying that we are agreeable to do the transaction at 500,000. But in order for me to take up more leverage from the bank, I need the SPA to be at 550,000. Because the objective is to take 90% loan from this 550,000. So it's 495,000. Instead of 90% of the agreed transacted price, which is 500,000, which is 450 only, I take out 45,000 more. So in a situation like this, right, there will be a lot of nuances. For example, the age of the property, it means that the owner held the property for how long? Because the RBGT amount will be different. If the owner chooses to sell higher, right, he will need to pay more tax. So it's only normal that the new buyer like me, because I want to leverage higher from the bank, I will need to cover all these costs. And all these nuances will be stated in an agreement signed, and it's usually managed by the lawyer. Coming back to the deal, in order to kickstart the entire process, right, on transferring lah, to get lawyers and lawyers to speak to each other lah, for the drafting of the SPA, right, there'll be a 2% earnest deposit that you need to pay first. In this case, will be 11,000. Then you still need to prepare the remaining 8% later during the signing of the SPA. So in other words, you still need to pay the 10% upfront first, but just that it will be refunded back to you later when the money is dispersed back to you. So after the completion of the deal, only it's a no money down deal, but you still need certain amount of fluidity certain amount of cash flow in order to proceed with these deals. This also applies to new properties because certain established property developers, right, they will still require you to pay up certain amount. And the general rule of thumb is around 1 to 3% because not all developers are just comfortable with a mere 500 booking fees. Usually an amount of 5,000 to 15,000, right, is pretty normal for you to book, pay upfront, and they will refund the money back to you, right, during the construction stage. It means when you reach stage 2A, that the foundation is up, now they are building the walls, then the developer will tell your bank that, hey, it's time to pay up money. And when they collect the money from your bank, then only the bank will release the money back to you, which is whatever booking fee that you paid earlier lah. So that's point number 1. Zero money down deal. Yes, overall, if you calculate the completion of the deal, yes, it's zero money down, but you still need certain amount of capital to play around for things to kickstart or for things to move on. And the second point people don't talk about is you need to have the financial background, you need to have that financial strength to qualify for the deals to happen. It means all these deals are only workable if you can qualify for the loan. Your financial status, your age, your income level needs to qualify 90% generally for all these deals to happen. And that's the main reason why like 3 to 5 years ago only, now people go crazy with the discounts, now up to 25% lah, up to 30% lah. Why? Because of the restriction on the third property. If you are buying the third property today, we are actually restricted at maximum 70% on loans. And because of that, a lot of people stop buying at the third property because who got money to pay that extra 20% upfront capital, right? So we are back to square one on why people don't buy property in the first place. So this is a form of cooling measures to restrict people stirring up the market lah. Then extreme forms of this kind of discounts now are called cashbacks. Now you got no money, you buy property, you get cash back in your bank, right? Again, those work provided you got enough money to pay the booking fee first for everything to kickstart. Number 2, you need to qualify for the loan at that certain margin before you can take out cash back. And usually these are just leveraging on the arbitrage between whatever bank valued the property at versus whatever price the developer are willing to sell to you. So the banks might see this property at 600,000, but the developer is willing to sell you at 400. That's why this kind of in-between difference in pricing, right? Then it's the marketeer's job to make this deal very interesting. So now there's an association with this kind of concept with property speakers along with bulk purchases, right? And why is that? Back then, these kind of deals are not as common as we oftenly see. Now, basically, you walk into sales gallery, the discounts are pretty direct. Last time, it's not as direct. Therefore, the only source for this kind of deals, right, or the source for information on how to craft these kind of deals are only available if you pay money to all these property experts and they teach you how to do it. But now, crazy deals that sometimes you cannot comprehend, right, are usually only available for bulk purchases. And again, this is only because they are taking huge amount upfront. They're talking about sometimes 30 units, 50 units, 100 units upfront. But that's a whole different topic for another day, right? But that's a whole different topic for another day in the future. Next time we'll talk about bulk purchasing separately. But the main message for today is actually you still need money, even though it's a zero money down deal or a no money down deal or whatever you want to call it. It doesn't mean you don't have the money in the bank. It doesn't mean you don't need a job or whatsoever. You still need to be financially sound for these kind of deals to take place. So after the deals, right, another debate that we need to have is actually what to do with the cash that you have on hand. Because of such deals in the market, now you can buy a property without a lot of capital. It means you can use your capital to put in other places. It can be stocks, it can be robo-advisory, it can be crypto or whatsoever. So you get to leverage on other people's money. Then when you let out to people, you leverage on other people's time for the property to mature and increase in value. So that's the whole objective of this exercise. However, we also have people in the market, I call them more seasoned one, because usually they pay upfront 50% for properties. They usually pay up 30% in down payment. They take loan only 70% one. And usually these people are rich. Usually these people are business people. They have nowhere to park their capital. To me, there's no right or wrong. How I wish I have that financial capabilities to just pay upfront and take 50% loan one for all my properties. Well, let's work hard towards that lah. After all, what matters is how you want to play the game. Some is you want to buy only one property for the rest of your life. Then some people are willing to pay upfront 50%. Then they only want to take 50% loan because they want to save the amount of interest. They take 10 years loan only. That one, if you can afford, yes, go ahead. I will be very admirable of your financial capabilities. But just that if my goal is to leverage more. I would use up as minimum as possible to own a property, and I will use whatever cash to do something else. So I can have 3 or 4 or 5 more properties with the same amount of money. It also depends whether are you a wage earner or you're a business person. So sometimes business people, their money come and go very fast. So sometimes when they have a lot of money, it's better to place it somewhere. If not, the money will flow out. That's what they tell me lah. Because sometimes if you put up a lot of money in your wallet, right, everything very finished. But if you put in FD, right, suddenly the money can stay there at least for a while. In worst case scenario, they tell me they can always push back the property to the bank and ask for a refinance because there's actually equity in the property. And I think that's all for today. This is really inspired by younger audiences, where I think a lot of young graduates are looking into this channel, and a lot of these curious youngsters, right, are brainwashed in that sense, or are misinformed sometimes, or they didn't see the whole picture entirely. So with their fresh grad income, they are mesmerized with this painted image, right, of owning several properties with a 3,000 salary. Very dangerous, very utopia thinking. Well, ultimately, do these deals work? Yes. Like, I benefited from a lot of such deals as well, but it's also important to know that you need money ultimately lah. And with that, thank you very much for watching and see you on the next one. Ciao.